today we will be covering the pending part of Provident Fund. We will be speaking about ESIC and about the professional tax and labor welfare fund. So these are the four topics that we will be covering today. So let's go ahead. So labor law, the compliances and computation. So employee provident fund or PF, as we all know, we had discussed it yesterday. It is managed under Employees Provident Fund organization, covers every establishment in which 20 or more people are employed. But for certain industries, you can have it like for generally it is 12% that is covered, right? So we do a 12% deduction from the basic salary. But for certain organizations, it is permitted to have a 10% contribution. What are those industries? So, jute, bricks, beedi, guargum, jute, and other sick industries. So these are certain industries in whose case you can deduct 10%. Yeah, but for that you have to take approval from the commissioner. For others, all over India, we deduct a 12% deduction for employees provident fund. Now, who all will be covered under the pension scheme? So for EPS, it is people with minimum of 10 years of service years are eligible for the scheme. So for the employees, from the employer's contribution, 8.33% goes to employee pension scheme. And the pension is calculated based on the pensionable salary and the pensionable service. The scheme provides for widow pension, child pension, and orphan pension as well. Provident fund wages presently, as per the government act that we have, it is people who are earning a monthly basic of 15,000. That is the ceiling that we have. And anybody earning more than that, that is primarily it is on a contributory basis. So the government does not require you to have that people whose basic is more than 15,000 that they should contribute to EPF. But as a general practice, this is like all the organizations, they have the scope of provident fund. So mostly it is there are reports that soon there will be a hike. So whoever's basic salary is 21 will be covered under EPF, but right now it is up to 15,000. That is the wage limit. But if you see all around, so you will see that people who are earning more than that are also being covered under provident fund. Now, contribution accounts and rates, out of the 12% contribution, 8.33 from the employer goes to the employee pension scheme, and the remaining 3.67 goes to the employee's EPF account. It is compulsory for all employees who draw a basic salary of less than 15,000 per month to become members of the employee provident fund, provided that you have 20 people. Yeah. PF deposit date. So the deposit date is 15th of each month and deposited on the basis of 12% or 10%. And right now, you don't have to do any paperwork. It is totally online, right? So it is completely online challan that you have to fill up, and you have to fill it up online and do the payment online. Once you have done the payment online, you will receive a temporary confirmation number, and you can check back in the PF website within 2-3 days whether the payment has been credited, and then you get the final receipt. So the best practice is that by 10th, you should be ready with your PF deposit data, because if the last date is 15th and then you will have maybe Saturday, Sunday, and then you need to give them 3 days for the bank to process the payment and all that. So you don't want to miss out on the deadline, because if you miss out on the deadline, then there is a heavy penalty attached to it, right? So then you have the PF deposit date. Do you all have the process flow for that? Did you all write it yesterday? Or for challan, how do you fill up the online challan? Okay, now for UAN number and KYC. So your KYC is a one-time process. So it is very important now that PF has moved online. For HR, it is important that you should be able to link the person's Aadhaar card, mobile number, and the bank account number on the website correctly. This data has to be absolutely error free. So whenever the employees are coming, you will get different types of employees. Most of the times they might have different names in different in the documents. So in this document is as per this, that document is as per that, and it is a very common complaint that you will have. Second is also about the mobile numbers. So they change the mobile numbers. So now that we get older, we realize that okay, one mobile is fine, but in the young age, you will see many youngsters, they will not be following that. So from HR point of view, you have to educate them that this is very, very important, that the numbers are all maintained properly. Right, so now we know that all this documentation work, it's become very, very important. Over last couple of years also, we have seen a lot of agitation on paperwork, on all of that things. So now you know that paper is the primary proof of your identity. So this thing has to be clear to us. So, and when we are filling in the KYC, we have to ensure that the Aadhaar, PAN and the bank account numbers are correct, and then only they are entered into the system. Now for bank account, what you have to keep in mind, what is one thing that you have to keep in mind? For bank account, what is one thing that you have to keep in mind? So when you are updating the bank account of a particular employee, so what is it that you have to keep in mind? What is very particular about the bank account? So it has to be only a single holder account. So you have to tell them that when they're filling up your form for provident fund, that this a single holder account? Okay, so you have to ask them first. If they say that no, it is a joint account, so then you cannot give a joint account, because what will happen is, if this person later on, let's say he left the work and after 3 years he wants to withdraw the provident fund, when he will apply for it, if it is not a single holder account, then obviously it cannot be processed. At that time, if he wants to change the bank account, again the request or the approval has to come, will maybe come to you. Okay, so it will be a tedious task. So it is always better that once you are registering them, at that time only you ask them that what is your bank account number, and is it a single holder bank account number or not. And Aadhaar and PAN also has to be registered accordingly. Fine. Now, when we are withdrawing the money from the employees provident fund, so we are using form 19 to withdraw the money from the provident fund, and form 10C to remove the money from the employee pension scheme. So for that, you have to be unemployed for 2 months, and after that only you can apply for that. So the date of exit, so 2 months from the date of exit. So as I told you, in my case, what the HR had done is they forgot to exit me out from the provident fund scheme, so I was shown as an active employee till January. So in that case, what happens is, when I am being shown as an active employee till January, so if I want to withdraw the money, I cannot do it in the month of February end. I have to wait till March. So all these things will create a confusion. So it is a very, very critical thing that you are able to do, like fill in the details as per, like very, very minutely. Okay, and the same thing when you are doing your provident fund, when you are filling the online return and the challan, so you will be, I told you about the ECR report which you need to upload there, right? Yes. So in the ECR report format also, that name will have to be mentioned as the person who has exited, and then only you upload it into the system and verify whether that person is showing as an exit, and then it will be exited. Okay, I've sent you all one document. Just see, can check and tell me if you have received it. So this is an official announcement from the Provident Fund office. That was in 2014. So just go through it. So in September 2014, there was a notification from the Provident Fund office regarding the people who are contributing more than 15,000, whose ever salary is more than 15,000, and they have been contributing. So in 2006, so as per the notification, what they were saying is they have to contribute 1.16% in extra towards their pension scheme. Okay, so but nobody was doing it, because for an organization HR, so now what is happening is, now the present trend is that when the employer is paying the 12%, so for people whose salary is more than 15,000, their 12% is totally going to the EPF fund. So the employer's contribution, 8.33% was going to the pension scheme, and the remaining 3.67 was going to the EPF scheme, and the employees total 12% was going to the EPF scheme. So after this notification, which came out in 2014, so now it is not so now if the salary, if the basic salary is more than 15,000, in that case, the employer's share of 12% goes to the EPF scheme and nothing goes to the pension scheme. So now the chart that you see over there, this is a field study. So in 2016, they did a field study to understand that whether the employees were contributing 1.16% towards their pension or not. And they found that most of the people were not doing it. Yeah. So that is when they came up with it that fine, then it will be, because see, from HR's point of view, it is not possible to customize it so much, right? So now if you have 100 employees, so out of 100, if 20 say, okay, 1.16 we want to contribute, and the rest 80 are saying, no, we don't want to contribute. So it is a haphazard thing. So most of the times the HRs will not even give that option to the employee, because the employee is also not aware about it, the new changes which are happening. They just know overall that 12% of my salary will go for provident fund and 12% from the employer will go to provident fund. So now when this provident fund office, they did a study to understand that whether people were contributing that 1.16 towards the pension scheme, they found out that most organizations were not following it. So the table that is provided is basically a proof of the data that they did some survey, some field survey, and they had collected that many samples. And from that many samples, they realized that this is not working out. So from 2014 onwards, any fresh applicant, anybody who is joining fresh, and the salary is above 15,000, the basic salary is above 15,000, for those employees, the employer's contribution goes to EPF fund and not to EPS fund. Clear, or should I repeat again? So what this document is saying is basically that, so if you go down, so provided that the members have to contribute at the rate of 1.16% on salary exceeding 15,000 as an additional contribution from and out of the contributions payable by the employees for each month under the provisions of the Act. So what they are saying is now that if your basic salary is above 15,000, so the employer's total 12% will go towards your EPF contribution and not towards your pension scheme. So which means that if my salary is above 15,000, so then I don't have anything going towards my pension scheme from the employer. I have my EPF account. So let's say in my EPF account, every month 2,000 rupees gets deposited, and the employers also 2,000 is getting deposited. जो पहले था ना कि split हो रहा था, so now the split has stopped totally. So for me, my provident fund account will have 4,000 rupees. But as an employee, I might say that, okay, why not in the pension scheme? I want some pension to come after I retire. So then it is given as an option that above 12%, I can contribute another additional 1.16% towards my pension scheme, so that the employer is not contributing anymore. So that I am only paying out of my salary 1.16%, which is extra for the pension scheme. So then they saw that mostly in most of the organizations are not following that. So anybody whose salary, basic salary is above 15,000, so they are not contributing towards the EPS fund. So that's when they said that let's make it null and void. So from 2014 onwards, if somebody's, see, for us, front mein nahi dikhta hai. This is the back end calculation which is happening in the PF office. I think most of the times as HR, even we don't know, right? So even we don't know about it because this is a back end calculation which is happening. So if my salary is more than 15,000 basic, then whatever is the employer contribution of 12% is going towards my EPF fund and nothing is going to my pension scheme. So if I today resign and I have 2 months of unemployment, and if I want to, so now which are the forms that I can now claim? Which are the forms I can claim then? Form number 19 and 10C I cannot claim. Like if I am a new joinee after 2014. If I am a joinee from 2010, so that means that, and my salary was above 15,000 or whatever, so the money has been going to the pension scheme. So then when I am unemployed for 2 months, I can claim Form 10C and I will get the money. But if I have joined in, let's say I have joined an organization in December 2014 and my basic is 15,000 rupees, in that case, I will not have any money in my pension scheme. So as a layman, I will not know that, right? So whenever I know that whenever I go and Google what are the forms that I need to fill up for PF withdrawal, it will say Form 19 and Form 10C. Now, whenever I will fill up the Form 10C, it will come as rejected, and then they will come to you, why is it rejected and all that. So this is for your understanding that if it is a new employee joined after September 2014, he or she will not have any money in the pension scheme. The whole money will be in the provident fund account only. Okay, clear?
So this calculation is done by the PF
PF
officer.
office, yeah,
We just have to deduct 12%.
right.
Okay.
If the salary, if the basic is less than 15,000 for any employee who is joined after 2014, then the EPS will gonna be calculated.
Yeah, so if his basic is below 15,000, then the same thing will follow. That is 8.33% of the employer's contribution will go towards the pension scheme.
And if the person joined in 2014 and basic may be on 10,000, then generally he will get the EPS. But if after some kind of development and he gets the high position as a, and over that the basic salary will raise more than 15,000. On that condition, whether the person will get the EPS or the EPS.
Yeah, so whatever money is there in the pension scheme, so that money he can withdraw after 2 months of unemployment.
And the EPS, the money is gonna be on the EPS section. Is the money will gonna be there, or it will be just go in the EPF section?
Now the EPS section where the money will be there. The EPS section, whatever was the contribution, that money will stay there. Okay.
One more thing you said just now, basic below 15,000, then the employer contribution will be 8.33 and the rest will be in the pension scheme.
No, 8.33 in the pension scheme and the rest in the provident fund scheme.
Okay, and what about basic is more than 15,000 then?
Then the whole money in the APF scheme.
Okay. Not will be in the pension scheme?
No, if the basic is more than 15,000 after, and the person is joined after 2014 and it is a fresh account, in that case, there is no money going to the pension scheme.
So now onwards, we have to follow these practices. If
yeah, this is in practice since 2014 only.
So above 15,000 basic, employer contribution is 12%, you mean to say?
Yeah, so the employer contribution was 12%, right? So that is already there, 12%.
Yes.
So what was happening in the back end is that out of the 12%, 8.33 was going to the pension scheme and the rest was going to the EPF scheme. Now, after 2014, what has happened is if the basic is more than 15,000, then the whole contribution goes to the EPF scheme and there is nothing going to the pension scheme. So whatever money was there prior to that in your pension scheme, so that you can take out with the 10C. But if you are now a new employee, like if after 2014, the money is not there in the pension scheme. So you can only pick it out with the Form 19. Okay, so we'll go through this once again. Okay, so this is what we were discussing, right? So these are the withdrawal. So these are the withdrawal eligibility. So for if you are building up a housing loan, you have to have minimum 60 months of employment, and you can withdraw up to 36 months of your basic salary. If you are withdrawing money for any marriage purpose, so 84 months of service, and you can withdraw up to 50% of your EPF account. If it is 1 year before retirement, then you can withdraw up to 90% of your EPF account. And in case of any medical expenses, no minimum service of tenure up to 6 months of the basic and the DA contribution is what you can take out. Now, how to withdraw? I have told you already how to withdraw. We'll just revise it again. So log into your EPF portal. put in the UN and the password and the CAPTCHA code. Now you go to manage section, and under manage you see the KYC. You check the KYC details. So basically you will be checking the bank account details, the PAN card and the Aadhaar card details, whether all are in sync or not. And if you see that all are in sync, then you need to choose which is the form that you are going. So the first option that you will see is claim form 31, 19 and 10C. 31 is for advance, 19 is for EPF withdrawal, and 10C is for your pension scheme withdrawal. After that, when you select that, so then again this page will open up wherein they will ask you to verify the bank account number with the last 4 digits. Once you have clicked on verify, after that only you will be able to withdraw the, so this kind of a page will come when you say that you agree to the terms and conditions. After that it will ask for a PIN number and you can proceed for your claim. Now, in case of any death, what happens upon the death of an EPF member, his or her beneficiary can make 3 types of withdrawal claims. So, EPF withdrawal claim through Form 20, EPS pension claim from Form 10D, and a life insurance claim under Employee Deposit Linked Insurance Scheme, that is Form 5IF. Okay. So if you see here, you don't have to, you could either do it through paperwork, or most of the time you will be able to see under the UN page that we had, you already have the death claim filling by beneficiary. This option is already there. So if you go in there, it is all consolidated. So you can go and you can file for your Provident Fund death claim. So you will be actually asked to fill in the UN number, the Aadhaar card number of the beneficiary, the name of the beneficiary and date of birth of the beneficiary. So if you see the nominee details, whenever the employees are filling up, has to be absolutely perfect, because if these details do not match, in that case the claim will be rejected. So now what happens is, most of the times you will hear that the claims that we do on Provident Fund gets rejected. It is a very common problem that is faced by the people, that the claim that is done, most of the times it gets rejected. Now, what are the various reasons for the claim getting rejected, and what we could probably do about it? See, these are most of the times it is because the checkbook that when you are putting in your claim, you have to give a picture of the checkbook in which account your money will come. Now that checkbook has to have your name printed on it. So the cancelled check which you are uploading, it has to have your name mentioned on it. So sometimes when we open up a salary account, so the first time that we join, we get a joining kit, right? So whichever bank we open an account with, we get a joining kit. In that joining kit, the checkbook that comes, it never has our name because it's not personalized. Correct. And in our generation, we hardly use the checkbook. It is mostly through online transactions or ATMs that we are doing all the transactions. So what happens is, the employee's checkbook stays as it is. Now, when they are trying to claim it, now because there is no name mentioned on the checkbook leaf, it might get rejected. That could be one of the reasons for the name getting, for the name not being printed on the check and the claim getting rejected. So basically you have to order for a new checkbook, and after that only you can start the claim. So mostly the reason, what is the reason for the rejection of the claim, they will send it to you via SMS. Over the last couple of years, it's gone really very good with the technology. Technically, it's very sound now, PF, I think, because I had withdrawn my PF somewhere around January of 2019. I remember the service was excellent. So there was no issue at all that we had to face about it. So in the message, you will be able to get it. Second reason why your EPF claim can be rejected is if your name, your UN name and the name on your bank records is different. This is a very, very common problem that we have, especially when we are doing the joining formalities. Also, we have seen that the names are different on your mark sheets. It's a different name on the employment certificates. It's a different name. So that could be one of the reasons, because what happens is, when I opened my bank account number, I might have put in as per my, let's say at that time I had my Aadhaar card. But when I did my employment details, at that time I gave you my mark sheets and you filled my details in the UAN, you activated my UAN as per my mark sheet name. So these two names might be a mismatch, and that could be one of the reasons for the claim not going through. Okay, now the third reason for the claims not going through could be the difference in the bank account numbers. Some of the bank account numbers, as you know, they start with a zero, especially with SBI, you have these bank account numbers. And when we are entering them into the system, the person might not put in the zero and might start with the normal numeric digit. In that case also, there will be a mismatch with the bank account number, and in that case also it will get rejected. Okay, now the other reason could be, so what happens is it could be rejected because you have not been able to, so your Aadhaar card and your bank card is not matching. So your Aadhaar, PAN and your mobile number has to be perfect. So if your Aadhaar and your PAN card details are not correctly updated into the system, that could be one of the reasons for your claim getting rejected. Another reason for the claim getting rejected could be the error with your date of joining or date of leaving. So as we heard from Uday, because her date of leaving was not correct as per her organization's details, so that is the reason that she is not able to claim the money. Right? So that is one problem that you can face. Now, since see, ideally, in this case, the employer should be taking the hit for it, because it is not Uday's mistake, because she is not going to go on Provident Fund and show her exit over there. It is the HR who is going to do. But unfortunately, you will not have that many ethical organizations and who will be taking the hit for you, because it's their mistake. It is the organizational mistake. It's not the employee's mistake. So in that case also the claim will not go through. So that is one of the reasons again for the claim not going through. Another reason is the circular that I shared with you. So if an employee has no money in the pension scheme and he has filled in the pension scheme 10C for withdrawal, then the claim will get rejected. So that person might come to you for the explanation. And the last one would be insufficient service. So if you have been working for less than 6 months, so and you cannot withdraw your PF even if you are unemployed for 2 months. So if you worked for 5 months only and you have paid your PF contribution for those 5 months, and after 5 months you quit the job and you were at home for 2 months and you think that, okay, that money that I had contributed for PF, let me withdraw it. PF will not allow you to withdraw that because you did not finish 6 months of contribution. So even if it is 6 months and one day, you will be able to get your money back. But if it is less than 6 months, you will not get anything. So that money is forfeited. Okay. So these are some of the reasons for the PF withdrawal not going through, and you have not been able to, they are not able to process your payment. Okay. Okay, now I've shared another PDF with you guys. It's a case, it's a very recent case. It's being regarded as one of the historic or landmark cases of Provident Fund. Okay, so this case study is from Deloitte. So you can go through this. It will take some time, take 10 minutes, go through it, and then we will discuss about it. So this case, I will just tell you all a brief. So now there was a case which was, there was a case filed by Vivekanand. One second, I'll just get the name clear. Yeah, so there's an institution called Vivekanand Vidya Mandir in West Bengal. So it's a school basically, and what they used to do is after every 2 years they used to give a special allowance to the teachers. Okay, so they used to, after 2 years or 1 year, something like this, they used to give a special allowance to the teachers. Okay. Now there was a case which had been registered stating that should special allowance be a part of PF contribution or not. Okay. So there had been earlier cases also. So when you go through the case study, you will see that there have been other organizations also which have fought over it, because the definition that is put in the Provident Fund Act is not clear. So that is the reason that there is always some ambiguity regarding what money is going to be considered as basic. So right now we are considering the basic salary as 40% of the pay, right? But there are various people who think that this should not be the case, and the allowances which we get should also be the percentage that we are calculating should also be on the basis of the allowances that we are getting. So now this case is being treated as a historic case. This is a latest case of 2019, and there might be some changes in the Provident Fund Act if once it is approved. So just go through it very clearly. So when you go through the case study, the major has been with the Vivekanand Vidya Mandir case. So this was so RPFC, that is Regional Provident Fund Commissioner. So they contemplated and they said that what most of the organizations nowadays they're doing is they are paying the PF on the basis of the basic salary. So if we go through the definition that PF had of base salary, so the basic salary, they are saying as per the act that it is any salary that is given to the employees. One second, I'll just read it out. So the basic wages is defined as in the section 2 of the act, means all emoluments which are earned by an employee while they are on duty or on holiday in accordance with the employment and which are paid to him, and it does not include dearness allowance or any cash value, right? So that is what is your basic wage. So basic wage is basically any salary that you're getting, irrespective of whether you are going to work or you are on PL. So the money that you're getting, that is supposed to be your basic wage. Now Provident Fund says that the contributions that are being made for Provident Fund will be calculated on the basis of your basic wage, on the basis of your dearness allowance, and on the basis of your retaining allowance. So that is what the definition says now. So now what the organizations are practicing is that they have kept the basic. So in some cases, like yesterday we were discussing with Tejasri also, so where she was saying that some organizations are now putting a cap that our basic salary will be 20,000 only, right? So whatever is additional will be paid as a special allowance, because then that ways the organization also does not have to take the responsibility of extra PF, right? So that is one case. Then also when you have a special allowance, so the basic salary is not clearly mentioned in the act. So following that, there have been numerous cases. So if you go through the case study again, Aram say once you like after the class also, if you go through it tomorrow, you will see that there have been so many cases with bigger organizations where they have come and said that Provident Fund. So in this case, Vivekanand Vidya Mandir case, the Provident Fund office, they came up and they complained stating that the organization is paying less contribution. And this case went till the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has now given a judgment that any kind of special allowance, if it is not performance based, will be a part of your basic wage. Okay. But this is now only what the Supreme Court has said. So now there will be amendment made in the Provident Fund Act, and that has to get passed, and all that has to happen for this to become active. But this is the most recent case of 2019. And if it is actually activated and if it comes into force, so then again, the way that we calculate our salary structures will go through a lot of changes. Okay, now when you go towards the end of the case study, what you can see is that they have also told us what will be the implication. So the implication will mainly be for all employees who are earning less than 15,000 basic salary. Because anyways, for the people who are earning more than 15,000 basic salary, PF is not mandatory for them, correct? So then in that case, they might not want to put the burden on the employer, because the employer will have the problem that why am I being put on a burden? So that is one of the incident that can happen. So then that is the case that you can have, wherein the principal employer who is now paying the salary for people whose salary is up to 15,000, they will have to shell out extra money. So go through the case study. It's quite interesting, and it is quite much in detail. So online, this is one of the big cases of 2019, and after the Supreme Court's judgment also, the we are expecting a lot of changes in the Provident Fund Act as well. Okay. So with this brings us to the end of Provident Fund chapter.